So in that one, I talk about the very first chapter is what is a good friend. And I use like online resources to give some examples of what a good friend is and just some of my own too. The difference between a good and bad friend. And all my books are written from a Christian perspective, but they're not necessarily in your face Christian, but that's like the underlying worldview, I guess you could say. And so I talk about in that book what the Bible says about friendships, and then at the very last chapter is there's more chapters as well, but the very last chapter is a list of questions you can ask yourself, like, well, how do I know if my friendship is good or bad? And so I ask like a list. There's like, I can't remember how many, but there's a bunch of evaluation questions you can ask yourself.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have another author on the podcast, and I'm excited to do this. I get to meet great people from around the world, and this author is actually really close to me, which is even better. So Jenny Alexander's here on the podcast. We're going to be talking about her many books, including one that's low content, which I had no idea what that is. She's going to explain even more. Jenny, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Great to have you. And like I said, you're somewhere close to where I am.
Yeah.
Let everybody know where you are.
I'm in Newmarket, Ontario.
There you go.
Yep.
It's always new in Newmarket, right?
It is. Yep.
I think we just came up with a slogan for you. I don't know.
True to the name. There's lots of shopping.
Oh, good. There you go.
For anyone that.
Yeah. So St. Catherine's is where I am. I don't know how saintly we are here, but
right.
There you go. I don't know how. Yeah, I'll have to do some research on that. I like that. You have many books.
Yes.
So what happened for you? How did you become an author? What was the thing that got you started?
Yeah. I've been dreaming of being an author since about 2012. And even before that, I've always loved to write, whether it's journaling, letter writing. I used to have pen pals, before email came abroad.
Me too. Yeah.
And, but last year, 2022, that's not last year. It feels like last year, but it isn't. I started writing on Medium, medium.com, and I started writing about divorce recovery. And I realized I had enough articles for a book. And then one day I just kind of put an ebook together. I only thought I was going to do an ebook, but then I realized I wanted to do more. So it just kind of snowballed. I didn't plan on doing so many books so soon. I didn't plan. They just kind of happened, I guess.
And your latest thing you were working on, before we hit record, you mentioned it, and I had never heard this term before. Yeah. But I'm happy that you'd said this. It's low content.
Low content.
I'm like, well, low content. I'm like, what is that? Tell me more.
Yeah, like I guess compared to like a novel, which would be high content, lots of writing. I mean, there's writing in this low content book I created, which is basically a word search, but it can be anything from journals, planners, which I guess are kind of the same. Well, they're different. Journals, planners, word search, puzzle books, that kind of thing. Amazon considers low content.
Okay.
You can create those and upload them to Amazon, and some people make a good living on those.
So are you going to be doing more of this now that you've done one?
I think so. Yeah, it's kind of a nice break from writing, because I've been revising most of my books. Because one thing I wish I had done early on is plan. I didn't, and I'm a real planner, so it's really odd that I didn't plan my books. I'm not saying I didn't do any planning. I just didn't plan in advance all the books I was going to do. And so now I'm going back and revising them and rewriting them. So, because I feel like as you write more, your writing improves. So I feel like they're stronger books now. But I'm in the process of reworking my third book, and I'm kind of stuck at it. So then I thought, I'll try this word search thing, and it was a nice change. You don't get writer's block from doing things like that. But it's still, there's still writing involved. But yeah.
Interesting. Oh, is that a book? Do you like word searches yourself? Is it something that you find fun? Yeah.
2 years ago, my husband gave me a word search in my stocking for Christmas, and I just started to do it a few months ago. I was thinking they were too hard for some reason. And then I just got really into it, and I did like 30 in a very short amount of time.
Nice.
And then he said, "Oh, you can actually create your own word searches." So he showed me online they have apps, or not apps, but like programs that you can create your own word search. And then I'm like, oh, then I kind of started thinking, well, maybe I could create one. And so I did some research, because not all the programs create word searches in a way you'd want to publish. Like, it's kind of finicky. So anyway, I went on YouTube and I searched word search and searched for word search puzzle books, creating them. And I found this one that was really good. And she linked to a word search program from the Google store, which was free, and it worked like a charm. And anyway, so yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah. And now the book isn't released yet because I'm waiting for the cover, the final tweaks on the cover.
Awesome. So we can, is that going to be through your website? Or is there some way that we can find out about that as it comes out in the future?
Yeah, okay. It'll be on my website for sure. JennyEalexander.com.
Beautiful. Good plug there too. Well done.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well done.
Had to add the E because there's a Jenny Alexander in the UK. And for anyone that knows about Goodreads, our books get mixed up. Like, I've been put on her list. I'm like, no, that's my book, not hers.
Have you ever met the other Jenny?
No, I haven't. I should.
Okay, well, there you go. You should probably reach out and say, hey, hi there.
Hi.
You could be my stunt double or something. Yeah, I like that. That's good. So we met and chatted about some of the books you've done in the past.
Right.
And I heard you over on Classic Advice with Scarlett Classic on her podcast.
Yep.
The two of you had a great conversation.
Yep.
So I would advise everyone to go listen to that episode because the two of you were great together. But your books kind of give us an idea. Like, when we talked, I had listed here 4 relationship books that you've done. Can you kind of give us an overview of those? And we're going to get a little more specific on them as well.
Yep, sure. So the first book that I ever did was on divorce recovery. Divorce Recovery Handbook, Effective Strategies for Healing. And then I wrote a book called Stop Settling When It Comes to Love, Wise Dating Practices for Women, although men could benefit too, but it's geared towards women. And really, the divorce books are geared towards women, but anyone could read it, really. And the third one, On the Road to Recovery, Overcoming 10 Common Speed Bumps Post-Divorce. So I ended up turning those 2 divorce recovery books into a series because they're slightly different. They're slightly different takes on recovery. One goes a little more in depth, and then the 4th book about relationships is called Breaking Free from Toxicity, a Friendship Evaluation Guide. So.
Okay. Is that one more geared around like your friendships and your relationships? Okay.
Because sometimes you might grow up with a certain group of friends and you just take for granted that you're always going to be friends. You may not necessarily realize that they're not actually good for you until like you grow up and start growing and you realize, I don't think these friends are good for me. That's what happened to me. So and it was a very confusing time. So I thought I should write this in a book in case other people are going through that too. And that's really why I wrote all of my books. They're kind of books I would have liked to read when I was going through those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you give us a little background to your story then? Yeah. Like something happened to spark all of this. Like, I'm interested in whatever details you would like to share with us, but kind of why writing helped you through all of this. I'd like to kind of touch on that as well.
Well, so I'm married now, but it's not my first marriage. It's a better marriage for sure. But I was married young, like 26. Maybe that's not that young. But I got married at 26 and I settled. Definitely settled for someone that wasn't really all that good for me. But I thought we were friends and I really wanted to get married and I really wanted the whole happy wife thing.
Yeah.
But it didn't turn out so good. There were red flags and I ignored them. I don't recommend doing that. But I know I'm not the only one who has done that. And so we were married almost 13 years and it turns out he was unfaithful like more than once. And I still stayed because I was like, I didn't want a divorce. I didn't even know. I mean, my confidence was really low by that point. And, yeah, so eventually I did have the courage to leave. It was the hardest decision, but the best one that I ever made. So, and then, yeah, so it took me a good long time to heal from that relationship, from that divorce. Um, Probably it wasn't until 9 years later that I started to date my current husband, and that's a whole amazing story. Um, and I just want to show other people that, if you're divorced, you can recover,
Mm.
but if you're dating, you don't have to settle. So and then the whole friendship thing ties in because after I got divorced, I should say, um, it took self-respect. Like I didn't have a lot of self-respect or self-confidence uh, prior to that divorce. But once I divorced, like that was me saying to myself, I'm worthy of much better. And I didn't necessarily believe that. I kind of believed it, but anyway, I was on my road to believing that. And anyway, that kick started the whole process of evaluating my friendships because once I let go of the marriage, which was completely toxic, then I
Yeah.
started to realize, you know what? My friendships, like the core group of friends that I've had like pretty much my whole life, or at least since high school or elementary, some of them, I realized they're not good for me. They're not that I was not perfect by any means, but those friendships were not healthy. And so, yeah, so all that kind of ties in together. When I started to respect myself, my entire life changed. And it
Wow.
started with the decision to let go of that bad marriage.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
And that's a that's a big decision to make,
It
right?
is.
You talked about just settling and not wanting to make that change and maybe not even knowing how.
Yes.
There's a lot of people listening to this who are probably can identify with that,
Right.
and they feel like they're in that space. What were some of the things that helped you to make the decision to make the change? Like, was it
Uh,
family, friends, or resources? What was it for
yeah.
you?
Basically, like the biggest thing that helped me was counseling. And at the time, ironically, I was going to school. So, like I went back to school at the towards the end of my marriage because I wanted to be a counselor. I'm not at the time. At this time, I never actually became a counselor, but I got the degree, and that kind of spilled over into my books. But anyway, when I started going back to school, they recommend that if you're going to school to be a counselor, you should get some counseling. So I'm like, yeah, I kind of like that idea, and I started going to this counselor. And ironically, she did we did one or two sessions of marriage counseling with her, and she could basically see the writing on the wall. She could kind of tell that the marriage wasn't very good. And so anyway, I ended up going back to her on my own, and she helped me to see how bad the marriage was. Like when you're in that situation, you don't necessarily clue in because you're too close to it. Like it's not great, but you don't realize how bad it is until someone points it out to you. And she gave me permission to like she gave me this exercise to make a timeline of our marriage, and like there was hardly anything good in that whole timeline. And she said one of the things that she said that really stuck with me was that future behavior is predicted by past behavior. So if their past behavior is not very good, then the future behavior is probably, I mean, people do change, but by and large, it's probably not going to be
Right.
much better. And she really gave me the permission to consider like my needs. And so yeah, she really helped me. She gave me
Because I
the,
think,
yeah.
yeah, as I think in a relationship, we don't want to break it. Like 13 years, that's a long time to be with someone, right? And
Okay.
it almost would maybe feel a little selfish to go, well, I'm not getting what I need from this
Yeah.
relationship, so I want to make a change. That
Yeah.
feels really selfish in the moment. And
Yeah.
maybe people are like, I don't want to be selfish.
Right.
Maybe it's my fault that it's not working. And then all this stuff happens, right?
Yep.
So how do you power through all that?
You just realize, for me, I realized that I just wasn't healthy. I was not myself at all. And I even had I don't think I would ever have carried it out, but I had suicidal thoughts too.
Mhm.
So like all that added up, and it's just like I knew it was a last resort I had, and I knew I had to get out. and a little, just to add some humor to the situation. It's not funny, but the day I left, I wasn't planning to leave that day, but I ended up calling my parents and telling them how bad things were and that I just had to leave. And they knew he had already had one affair, and that we had, they thought we had worked things out or whatever. But then when I told them and I said I had to leave, the first thing they asked was there more affairs? And I said yes. So, but anyway, yeah, like I was saying, I wasn't planning to leave that day, but when I was talking to them, I remember saying, I have to leave and I have to leave right now. And as soon as I said that, I felt like a weight, like it was pretty incredible. But the funny part is that morning I had made a big slow cooker pot of baked beans. And so I left, and he came back that night with a big pot. He didn't like baked beans. So it's almost like my way of revenge. I was getting back with food.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Wow. So I guess that was probably not received as well, right? That's interesting. That's like an interesting little mic drop moment.
I know.
Like, I'm out of here, and here's a bunch of beans.
But I never, like I said, I did not plan to leave that day. It's just kind of funny, ironic. Find humor when you can in situations like that.
I like that. So as you're writing your books, how does it help you to process, to move forward, to create the next chapter, the podcast name, to create the next chapter for you? How does it help writing these books and getting your thoughts out from your mind onto paper? How helpful and healing is that?
It helped me review the process that I went through, like the things that I struggled with after marriage. Because in the first book, I write about things like anxiety. What else do I write about? All of a sudden, I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah.
I write, and that book is one chapter on anxiety. No, there's more than that. I should have had my books with me.
Yeah, that's all right.
Anxiety. Oh, I talk about lies we believe when we're going through things like that. Self-confidence, self-respect, like all the things I struggled with. So I guess writing those books helps me see that they make me feel stronger because I went through all that, and now I can help other people going through it. I can give them hope.
It's interesting. It's kind of like I've heard other authors say when they write, it kind of unlocks things for them that they don't see the connection between story A and story B.
Right.
But when they write it out, they're like, oh, wait, this goes to this and this goes to this. They can see the connection pieces between their story as they map it out. And then things make more sense.
Yeah.
Because you live life in little components and compartments, and you don't realize that something that happened on this day also connected to something that happened 2 years ago. And you're like, oh, I see the patterns now. I see my journey is unfolding in front of me as I'm writing.
Yeah.
And that helps in the healing process.
Right. And even the way all my books, they all tie together, because the book on dating, it's like, I don't want people to go through what I went through. So I share things like paying attention to red flags and what a good relationship looks like. Because I have a good relationship now, and I have a good man now. So I know the difference between good and bad, what's good and bad. So, I mean, people can read the Stop Settling book and maybe avert divorce or avert a bad relationship.
Yeah. At the early stages.
At the early stages, exactly.
When everything's all perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not perfect. When you talk red flags, what were some of the red flags that kind of stood out to you now in hindsight as you look back?
Yeah, the biggest ones were he lacked responsibility. Red flag number one. And my dad had mentioned to me that he wasn't very impressed with with his lack of responsibility. So, I mean, someone already pointed it out to me, and I just, oh, well, it's not that bad or something. But I knew it was, and he was really bad with money. And that was an issue that carried through. If you think things are going to get better, if you think, oh, I see these red flags, but maybe they'll get better in marriage, they'll get worse.
Yeah, they say time heals all wounds, but if you don't take care of the wound, that doesn't help either.
No.
So you'd actually have to do the thing, do the work.
That's right.
Yeah, because I think in young relationships, early days of a relationship, you kind of are blinded by, oh, wow, someone likes me. This is great. I found someone. And then you're a little bit more apt to look past some of the things that are like, this isn't going to be good in the long term. This certain quirk or thing about this person.
Yeah.
And I've heard people in early days relationships being engaged.
Yeah.
And the whole family's going, hang on, Jenny. We have some concerns.
Yeah.
And you're so caught up in everything that's happening that you don't see them.
Nice.
And then you almost turn on your family for turning on your partner.
Right.
And you're like, well, how dare you?
Yeah.
I love this person.
Right.
And they're just trying to help you. They're seeing things, right?
Yeah.
Because they know you as well. They've had you in their life for their whole life.
That's true.
So,
yeah.
Right. So I think we need to heed that attention and those warnings, maybe.
Yeah, definitely listen to your family. I mean, they're not always right, but they know who's good for you.
Yeah.
And when I met my current husband, I know because we met online and we were long distance. I was in Nova Scotia and he was here in Newmarket. So I think my family might have been a little on edge at first, but the moment they met him and the first time they talked to him for like 2 hours. I'm like, they like him better than me. Not really, but yeah, it was totally different.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that must be more reassuring for you too.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you commit to somebody and you spend 13 years with them and then you're starting again.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't want to do that again. I want to do this right in the right way. So you're a little more cautious as well.
Definitely.
Right?
And he even asked my parents' permission before he proposed. So
nice.
Yeah.
See,
my ex didn't do that.
there you go.
Yeah.
So, okay. Who then would be your perfect ideal reader for your books? Do you have somebody in mind that we can, because somebody's listening to this going, I know someone who's struggling in their relationship.
Yeah.
Is this the right book to give them? Yes or no? So who is this for?
I would say middle-aged women, probably middle-aged, because I was in my early 40s going through that.
Okay.
Yeah. And even the friendship thing. I mean, any age, even younger women first starting out could actually benefit from the dating book too. But yeah, I would say more middle-aged women.
Okay. And then the whole idea around toxic friendships that you talk about.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that. That's not in a romantic sense, but just your friend group. How's that book going to help? What are we going to find when we read that one?
So in that one, I talk about the very first chapter is what is a good friend. And I use like online resources to give some examples of what a good friend is and just some of my own too. The difference between a good and bad friend. And all my books are written from a Christian perspective, but they're not necessarily in your face Christian, but that's like the underlying worldview, I guess you could say. And so I talk about in that book what the Bible says about friendships. And then and at the very last chapter is there's more chapters as well, but the very last chapter is a list of questions you can ask yourself, like, well, how do I know if my friendship is good or bad? And so I ask like a list. There's like, I can't remember how many, but there's a bunch of evaluation questions you can ask yourself. And yeah.
So from your perspective, after writing that book, what are some of the elements of a good friend?
A good friend is a balanced friendship. Like it goes both ways. There's give and there's take.
Okay.
A good friendship, you listen to each other. Like there may be times when one person needs to talk more than the other, but again, it's balanced. It goes both ways. You have fun together. You have shared interests. You build each other up. You tell each other the truth, even if it's hard. Things like that.
Yeah, that unbalanced friendship gets dangerous when every time you're with that person, you feel drained.
Yes.
Like they take everything out of you, but they never give you anything.
Yeah.
So every time that phone rings or that email comes in or that social media post comes to you from that friend, you immediately put up a wall like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
What do they need now? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I know like one of those friends I distanced myself from. I could tell things weren't going well when I started she would call and I'm like, I'm not going to answer that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But then again, in that moment, are we being selfish that
right.
this person drains me? Maybe I'm here for them and they need
No.
me. But then again, you're giving and giving all these people. You just keep giving a piece of yourself away. Eventually, there's nothing left.
And how do you really feel when you're with them? Like, do you feel bad or do you feel
Yeah.
good? And there's
Yeah.
seasons for, I mean, sometimes people do go through issues. Um, so it is a balancing act for sure.
So if you're that person that takes from your friends all the time, our message to them today, Jenny, would be you call them up sometime and don't ask for a single thing, but just
Right.
give.
Listen. Yeah.
Give back.
Yeah.
If you value their friendship and what they do for you, call them up with no expectation of them giving you a thing.
Yeah.
And you give to them. Maybe that's your opportunity to keep that friendship alive.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that's one thing. People get shocked when they're like, why doesn't Jenny pick up the phone anymore? I would always call her every Monday and tell her how bad my week is.
I know.
And she'd always listen.
I know.
It's like, well, maybe Jenny's had enough listening. Right?
I know.
Maybe it's time for you to listen to Jenny.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So there's a lesson for all of us. I think we can all do that this week. I like that.
That's right.
And so you've also done some work in poetry as well, right?
Yeah, I have a poetry book, and that actually documents my faith journey. I was in church for many years, but I had doubts and questions about my faith, and eventually I did find assurance, and so and I had other questions about other faith issues. But anyway, that poetry book documents my journey from doubt to faith, and basically it gives the reader a permission to realize that doubts and questions are okay, and God can, if he can answer my doubts and give me assurance, he can do the same for anyone.
So give us an example of one of the doubts that your poetry kind of addresses. What's something that you kind of wrestled with?
Yeah, well, like one of the biggest doubt that I had was I even a Christian? Like, you can go to church, but that doesn't make you a Christian. So that was my biggest doubt, and that took a long time. It took a while to clear the air on that one, but I did finally gain assurance there. So
yeah, and
other people have had similarly long doubts in that way too. So if that's you, you're not alone. Whoever is listening, if that's you, you're not alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I've heard people say that like church is for perfect people and I'm not perfect, so I can't go.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, it's not a room full of perfect people.
No, that's right.
There's not even close.
No.
Everyone's got their thing that they're working through. So
yeah.
There's lots of room for everyone. I love that.
That's right.
The whole thing around writing on Medium, for those authors who have never done it, is there any special way that we should approach Medium and getting set up as an author writing on there? What do we do to?
You can sign up today and you can enter their partner program and start getting paid right away. Like, well, you need people to read your stuff, but it's pretty easy to start. I think I had heard of Medium years ago, but I never went there. And my husband encouraged me to get on Medium because, well, when I got married, I was a secretary for 25 plus years in Nova Scotia. And when I got married, I was able to retire early, which is awesome. But I'm not retired. I'm writing now. But he suggested Medium because both his mom and his sister are on there. And his sister does pretty well at that. And so... yeah. So anyone could go on there and start writing and yeah.
Okay. So like all the articles are on Medium? Like they don't send them out, right? They're all on the Medium?
No, you can send them out yourself. They have like a friend link where you can just like copy and paste this, like sharing a YouTube video sort of thing.
Okay. It's a great place to start practicing your writing skills, right?
It is. Yeah. And you get feed. People will, like and they clap. It's a clap instead, but same thing as a like, right? And that rhymed too. You'll get eventually start getting claps and comments too.
So it's kind of like a social media page for authors.
Yeah, it is.
Kind of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can ignore the rude comments if you want. There's not too many, but
Come on, people, be nice.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay. I like that. So now we got a low content book coming out from you.
Yeah.
And probably many more in the future.
Yeah.
What else are you working on? We're living the next chapter here. It's the name of the podcast.
Yeah,
so I
that's
always
right.
have to
I
ask.
forgot about that.
Right?
Yeah.
What's your next chapter? What are you doing?
Well, I still need to second divorce recovery book. I need to get unstuck and finish revising that. But otherwise, yeah, I have an idea for another low content book. This one is for children, and I'd love to have a children's book someday. I have a book written, and I've considered illustrating it myself. I draw a little bit. That's actually one thing I discovered. When you meet the right person, they will bring out the best in you. Like when I met my current husband, I didn't know I was so creative, but like he brought out the creativity in me. He's very creative too, so we kind of feed off each other. And I started drawing. I didn't know I could draw. I have to look at a picture, and I don't trace it, but I kind of copy it in a way.
Yeah.
Add my own details, but I didn't know I could do that. So I tried to illustrate the book myself, but it's a lot of work. And so someday one of my next chapters, I'd like to have a children's book published.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for the children's book, the images are just as important as the words, right?
Yeah.
Where all the other things you're doing, especially a word search, it's all about the words and there's no images at all, right? So that's a new muscle for you.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
My husband says I can draw without looking at other things, but we'll see.
It's another new piece of you that could unlock another creative outside of you as well. That's exciting.
And another thing I started doing when I met him was I used to play the violin as a child, but I didn't practice and anyway, bad. But now I actually play and practice, and I play, he plays at the piano at church and I play the violin. So
nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
See?
Yeah.
Now that sounds like a healthier relationship.
It's so much healthier. There's peace in our home. It's amazing. Of course, there's no perfect relationship, but it's really, really good.
Has your husband read your books?
Yep, most of them.
What does he think of your writing?
He's very good. He's so supportive. Like I was going through the process of revising it. He didn't think I had to, but I'm a perfectionist, and so no,
it's nice.
It's really good.
He gets a behind the scenes view into your world.
He does.
It's a very personal thing to write about as well.
Yeah.
You're not writing some fictional story that's not real and fake characters. This is you. This is all you on the paper.
That's right.
So
and it
might be a little intimidating to do that, right?
Yeah. And he's actually been divorced too. So we're both our story is one of hope, because if we can find a new start, so can anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. That's a great point. I love it. So, Jenny, where do we find you and stay up to date on all of the books and all of the things you're doing?
I know.
You got to send us to all to remind us about your website and maybe what we can see when we get there.
Yeah. So, JennyEAlexander.com. Don't forget the otherwise you might go to the UK. Jenny E. Alexander. So I have an About Me section where I just explain what the purpose of my books are. I call myself a voice of hope for the heartbroken. That's kind of the theme running through most of my books. And so I talk a little bit about that. And I share my books. I have some testimonials there. I have a newsletter sign up, although I've been gearing my newsletter towards the heartbroken, but I might be switching over to self-publishing. I'm not sure. It's good to be focused. I don't want to be, because I started writing about my self-publishing journey on Medium, and people really seem to be getting a lot out of that. So, and I love doing it. I love sharing my self-publishing journey. So, but JennyEAlexander.com. Oh, and I have all my podcast interviews on there as well. And I have a blog as well. There's some of the articles are the same as what's on Medium, but some of them are not the same. So.
Okay. Good. So everything there in one location for everyone. And we'll have the links to everything in the show notes.
And I almost forgot. I have actually 2 YouTube channels. One is called Art Strings. So it's YouTube at @art_strings.
Sure.
So that's where I share my creative journey. And then the other one I just started is Savvy Self-Publishing.
Nice.
Any Pirates of the Caribbean fans will probably think of Johnny Depp.
Yes.
The self-publishing. So that's at Savvy, SAVVY, self hyphen publishing. I can email you those if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll put the links in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So
good. So is that like a new endeavor for you then?
Yeah, because it kind of goes along with what I'm writing on Medium, all the self-publishing tips. Things like scams to avoid, other income streams.
Interesting.
Yeah. Exciting.
So you have the perfect audience. You got all ears perked up when you said that.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of authors that listen to this podcast. So
yeah,
they can come and chat with you and follow your journey there too then.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Jenny, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
And thank you for putting out so much good things in the world to help people.
Thank you.
You know, the power of our story is only powerful when we share it.
That's true.
Otherwise, it's not, right? It's not as powerful as it is. So
that's true.
You sharing your story can help so many people. So thank you for doing what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great.
I love it. Again, everybody, all the information in the show notes as always. Please go support our amazing authors that come on the podcast. And when you buy all of Jenny's books, like all of them, make sure you leave a review for each of them and tell people why you love these books. Okay.
Yes, please.
It's really important for all of our authors. Yeah. Don't just do great book, great author. That's nice. But do exactly why you found value in it so people can see that. Okay. Yeah. Jenny, again, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening all the way to the end of the podcast. That's a big signal to all of the players, the YouTubes, the Apples, the Spotifys, that you found value in this episode of Living the Next Chapter. Just by you listening to the end, you just sent a huge bat signal out to the app saying this was a great podcast, a great conversation. So you listening to this point, you've done your job. I have one more ask of you. If you know anyone that would benefit from this conversation, would you share this episode with them? Would you just get on, send them a message, send them the episode, tell them about this episode, tell them to go livinginthenextchapter.com to get all the information about the podcast. Can you do that for me? Because the more people that hear this message, this episode, the better. I want to support these amazing authors. And I know you do as well. So sharing this episode really helps. And I appreciate you. See you on the next episode. And thank you for listening to Living the Next Chapter.